For more on Israel's economic future, I'm joined in studio by Dan Arbell, scholar in residence at the Center for Israeli Studies at American University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, on the minds of voters, what were their top priorities going into this election?
So this was a referendum over the continued leadership of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And it marginalized many other issues like economic issues, and even the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was not a high priority for voters. So it was either half of the voters were more or less opposing the continuation of Netanyahu's rule, and the other half were supporting the continuation of his rule.
Now, as we look at some of these numbers, with Israel's GDP growing 70% since Netanyahu took office, and being that that's despite little to no trade with some of its neighbors, how key was that at all to how voters decided?
You know, surprisingly, the economy did not figure in very high in voters' considerations. As I've mentioned, it was a referendum on Netanyahu's leadership, and so the economy kind of was third or fourth priority. And there are burning economic issues that some of you that you've mentioned that Israel needs to deal with, yet voters, when they had to make their decision, was either for or against Netanyahu, and then national security, I guess, comes in second. But the economy or social economic issues were less important to voters this time around.
So what do you think is making the race so tight?
So I think it's either Netanyahu fatigue after 10 years, consecutive years as prime minister, with an additional 3 years as prime minister, corruption charges lodged at the prime minister, possible indictments in the near future. That drives the forces who oppose Netanyahu. And others kind of see him as the savior and as somebody that has no replacement, and he's done such a great job, and they feel his base feel that he's the one, and at this point, no one else can match him.
And in terms of some of the negatives, obviously you mentioned the corruption scandal surrounding Netanyahu, and Gantz has also been accused of perhaps not having as much economic experience given Netanyahu's track record. Which one do you think played a bigger role in how Israelis are voting?
Well, again, I think that Gantz was a newcomer. He was a decorated general for 35 years, but not too many Israelis knew of him. And he himself made a miracle tonight by coming out second in the votes with 35 seats, projected seats in parliament. And again, he signaled in his messaging also, he was trying to hammer the message that he is not Netanyahu, that he is bringing a new atmosphere, that he's going to work for national appeasement, national reconciliation, that he's going to work to deal with issues like the cost of living and overpopulated hospitals. So that clearly, those messages resonated with those who supported him, but Netanyahu's rallying cry at the end managed to get his voters in line in supporting him.
Now let's also look at the trade picture. We saw that Israel has tried to expand its global reach under Netanyahu, including into India and several African countries for its exports. But you also have a lot of people wondering, should we go the globalization route or should we take this more nationalistic approach? How do you see that jarring with trade partners like the US who are taking a sort of anti-globalization approach?
Well, Israel has a free trade agreement with the United States, with Canada, with the European Union, is working on one with India. Israel's import and trade the volume of trade has increased in recent years. Of course, the region still remains a target or a sought-after goal for Israeli exports, and that's going to be part of a future, perhaps, peace arrangement or normalization with its Arab neighbors. That being said, I think that the Israeli high-tech sector, which is booming, the fact that Israel is the #2 in the world in startups, the fact that Israel is is a country third on NASDAQ in companies being traded after the US and China, all that contributes to a sense of confidence among Israelis, confidence among investors in the Israeli economy, and investments have increased, FDIs have increased in Israel in recent years, and that's also contributing to an economy which is moving fast forward.
Now, since it is such a tight race, we should also look at the potential for Gantz winning. If by some chance Netanyahu is out and the country needs to brace itself for austerity measures, how does that change the outlook for Israel's economy?
Well, I think that austerity measures is kind of, we're not there yet. Obviously, there are issues that need to be taken care of. The national debt, which has increased, the cost of living, which is taxation, which probably a new government would have to raise taxes after a while. That has not been the case. So there are issues that need to be dealt with, challenges for the Israeli economy. We're not at the austerity stage yet, and at this point, there's the growing gap between rich and poor, which needs to be addressed. There are many other issues that need to be addressed, but I think that the economic policy of the current government, and I think it promises to continue, is kind of balancing between, tighter control of the economy, and on the other hand, allowing this boom in the high-tech sector and in the trade to continue.
All right, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Dan Arbell there, scholar in residence at the Center for Israeli Studies at American University.
Thank you.